It was the festival of spring.
From the wintry shades of narrow lanes and alleys emerged a gaily clad humanity, thick as a swarm of bright-coloured rabbits issuing from a warren.
They entered the flooded sea of sparkling silver sunshine outside the city gates and sped towards the fair. Some walked, some rode on horses, others sat, being carried in bamboo and bullock carts. One little boy ran between his parents' legs, brimming over with life and laughter.
The joyous morning gave greetings and prideful invitations to all to come away into the fields, full of flowers and songs.
"Come, child, come," called his parents as he lagged behind, arrested by the toys in the shop that lined the way. He hurried towards his parents, his feet obedient to their call, his eyes still lingering on the receding toys.
As he came to where they had stopped to wait for him, he could not suppress the desire of his heart, even though he well knew the old cold stare of refusal in their eyes.
"I want that toy," he pleaded. His father looked at him, red-eyed in his familiar tyrant's way. His mother, melted by the free spirit of the day, was tender and giving him her finger to catch, said, "Look, child, what is before you?"
The child sobbed. "Mother," when pleasure of what was before him filled his eager eye. They had left the dusty road on which they had walked so far and come upon a footpath in a field.
It was a mustard field, yellow like molten gold as it swept across miles and miles of even land. It rose and
Fell with each fresh eddy
of wild wind and strayed in places into broad, rich tributary streams, yet ran in a constant sunny sweep towards a distant mirage. Where it ended, on one side stood a cluster of low, mud-walled houses, thrown into relief by a dense crowd of yellow-robed men and women. From these arose
a high-pitched
sequence of whistling, creaking, squeaking, roaring, humming noises that swept across the graves to the blue-throated sky like the strange sound of Lord Shiva's mad laughter. The child looked up at his father and mother,
filled with joy
and wonder of this vast glory, and plunged headlong into the field, prancing like a young colt, his small feet timing with the fitful gusts of wind that came rich with the fragrance of more distant fields. A group of dragonflies were bustling about on their purple wings, intercepting the flight of a lone black butterfly in search of sweetness from the flowers. The child followed them in the air with his gaze
till one of them would fold its wings and rest, and he would try to catch it.
But it would go fluttering, flapping up into the air when he had almost caught it in his hands. One bold black bee, having evaded capture, sought to tempt him by winding around his eyes and nearly settled on his lips when his mother gave a cautionary call. "Come, child, come on to the footpath." He ran towards his parents gaily and walked ahead of them for a while. He was soon left behind. However, attracted by the little insects and worms along the footpath that were teeming out from their hiding places to enjoy the sunshine. "Come, child, come," his parents called from the shade of a grove, where they had seated themselves on the edge of a well. He ran towards them. An old banyan here stretched its powerful arms over the blossoming tree of jagjamun, neem, champak, sirisha and gulmohar trees, and cast its shadows across beds of golden cassia, and as an old grandmother spreads her skirts over her young ones.
But the blushing blossoms freely offered their adoration to the sun, in spite of their
protective chaperone, by half covering themselves, and the sweet perfume of their pollen mingled with the soft cool breeze that came and went in little puffs. A shower of young flowers went upon the child as he entered the grove, and forgetting his parents, he began to gather the raining petals in his hands. But lo, he heard the
Cooing of doves.
and ran towards his parents, shouting, "A dove! A dove!" The raining petals dropped from his forgotten hands. A curious look was on his parents' face till a quail began to sing sweetly. "Come, child, come!"
They called to the child, who was now running in wild circles round the banyan tree, and gathering him up, they took the narrow winding footpath which led to the fair through the mustard field.
As they neared the village, the child could see many other paths full of thorns, leading to the fair, and felt at once repelled and fascinated by the confusion of the world he was entering. A sweetmeat seller hawked gulab jamun, rasgulla, barfi, jalebi at the corner of the entrance, and a crowd gathered at his shop filled with multicolored sweets decorated with leaves of silver and gold.
The child stared open-eyed.
And his mouth watered for the barfi that was his favorite sweet. "I want that barfi," he slowly murmured, but he half knew as he begged that his plea would not be heeded because his parents would say he was greedy. So without waiting for an answer, he moved on. A flower seller hawked, "A garland of gulmohar, a garland of gulmohar." The child seemed irresistibly drawn by the
Implacable.
sweetness of the scents that came floating on the wings of the languid air. He went towards the basket where the flowers were heaped and half murmured, "I want that garland." But he knew well his parents would refuse to buy him those flowers because they would say they were cheap. So, without waiting for an answer, he moved on. A man stood holding a pole with yellow, red, green, and purple balloons flying from it. The child was carried away by all the rainbow colors and was possessed by an overwhelming desire to possess them all. But he well knew his parents would never buy him the balloons because they would say he was too old to play with such toys. So he walked on further. A juggler stood playing a flute while a snake, which had coiled itself in a basket, raised its head, raised in a graceful bend. All around it, the music played like the gentle rippling of a miniature waterfall. The child went towards the juggler, but knowing his parents had forbidden him to hear such coarse music as the jugglers played, he proceeded farther. There was a giant wheel in full motion. Men, women, and children, carried away in a whirling motion, shrieked and cried with dizzy laughter. The child watched them intently, a smile on his face, his eyes rippling with the same movement, his lips parted in amazement till he felt that he himself was being carried around. The giant wheel went very fast, seemed at first, then gradually began to slow down. Presently, the child rapped with a finger in his mouth, asked it to stop, and made a bold request. "I want,
Go on the roundabout.
please, father, mother." There was no reply. He turned to look at his parents. They were not there ahead of him. He turned to look on either side. They were not there. He looked behind. There was no sign of them. A full, deep cry rose within his throat, and with a sudden jerk of his body, he ran from where he stood, crying in real fear. "Mother, father!" Tears rolled down his eyes, and his face flushed hot. Panic-stricken, he ran in all directions, not knowing where to go. "Mother, father!" he wailed again. His yellow turban came untied, and his clothes, wet with perspiration, became muddy where the dust had mixed with the sweat of his body. His light frame seemed heavy as a mass of lead. Having run to and fro for a while, he stood defeated, his cries turning into sobs. At little distance on the
Green grass.
he could see through his tears men and women talking. He tried to look intently among the patches of bright yellow clothes, But there was no sign of his father and mother. He ran again, this time to a shrine where people seemed to be gathering. Every little inch of space here was filled with men, but he ran through people's legs, his little sob lingering in the air. Mother, father, near the entrance to the temple. However, the crowd became very thick. Men jostled each other, heavy men with mean eyes and hefty shoulders. The poor child struggled to find a way between their feet, but was knocked to and fro by their brutal movements. He might have been trampled underfoot had he not shrieked at the highest pitch of his voice, Mother, father! A man in the surging crowd heard his cry and, stooping with very great difficulty, lifted him up in his arms. How did
Get here, child.
Whose baby are you? The man asked as he steered clear of the mass. The child wept more bitterly than ever now and only cried, I want my mother. I want my father. The man tried to soothe him by taking him to the giant wheel. Will you ride on it? The child broke into shrill solos and only shouted, I want my mother. I want my father. The man headed towards the place where the juggler still played on the flute and the cobra was dancing. Listen to that nice music, child, he pleaded, but the child shut his ears with his fingers and shouted his double-pitched strain, I want my mother. I want my father. The man took him near the balloons, thinking the bright colors would distract the child and quieten him. Would you like a rainbow-colored balloon? He asked. The child turned his eyes from the flying balloons and just sobbed, I want my mother. I want my father. The man, still in his kindly desire to make the child happy, bore him to the gate where the flower seller sat. Look, can you smell those nice flowers, child? Would you like a garland to put around your neck? The child turned his face away from the basket and continued crying, I want my mother. I want my father. Thinking to humor his disconsolate, charged by a gift of sweets, the man took him to the counter of the sweet shop. What sweets would you like, child? He asked. The child turned away from the sweet shop and only sobbed, I want my mother. I want my father.